Yeah, I think we're going to start. We got over 20 people. We had a lot of registrants actually, so we got over 60 people. But I think I'm going to make the introductions and say hello to everyone. So hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on our online Connect Talk webinar, Survive Now, Rebound Later, with Steve Endacott and Seamus Conlon of Rebound Consulting. So really, really cool to see so many of you logged on already. I'm sure a lot more will be logging on in the first few minutes. Now, given the current global situation, we want to continue to share knowledge, advice with you all, and provide our community and the travel industry with a space to collaborate, seek reassurance, and support each other. There is no doubt that there are tough times. These are unprecedented times. And I think it's fair to say that we are all learning how to adapt on a day-to-day basis. We also want to play our role in the recovery and resurgence of our industry. And this is a process that I have every confidence will begin in the near future. This is our fourth webinar in our series of Connect Talks, with a further two coming on the 14th with crisis communication expert Jeff Chatterton being asked to do a part 2 webinar by High Demand, and on the 21st of April, Scotty Johnson on the meetings incentive sector. Today we have Steve Endacott and Seamus Conlon of Rebound Consulting. Rebound Consulting is a collaboration between Holiday Taxi's co-founder and former On Holiday Group CEO Steve Endacott, former Thomas Cook head of tour operating and TUI chief financial officer Will Waggett, who is now couldn't join us here, unfortunately, for his compassionate absence. And here with us, we've got Seamus Conlon, former managing director of Air Tours Holiday and former CEO of cruise.co.uk. So they will be discussing how travel companies can navigate the current coronavirus crisis, looking long-term strategic advice, cash control, cost control, restructuring, and options for financing or refinancing. So we hope that this session will be a welcome insight for you all. Before I hand over and I tempest the guys with lots of questions, I wanted to let you know how is this going to work and what to expect. So we have built in a few breaks in between the questions that I'm going to ask these guys to allow you all the opportunity to ask questions. I know by now a lot of you may have used Zoom before, but if not, you can ask questions at any time using the actual Q&A that appears at the bottom of your screen. We've got lots of people on from my team as well. David, especially David Benitez, is also there to help me field any questions. This session will last around an hour to an hour and 15, and it is being recorded. So if you think that any colleagues or friends might actually find this webinar useful, we will be distributing this recorded session at the end of the day, hopefully, if not tomorrow morning, and you can forward it on. Finally, please be respectful and understanding of one another. We encourage you to have a positive and supportive spirit in these challenging times. Between us all, there is such wealth of knowledge, insights, advice that can be shared to help us guide us through these uncertain times. So please, let's use each other for the good of our industry. So guys, Steve and Seamus, I've got a question for the both of you, but I'm going to ask this first to Steve. Why set up Rebound Consulting? Why now? And what's in it for you guys?
Oh, Mrs. Cynic, straight away. We've both been in the industry for a long time. He's slightly longer than Seamus, but we both have our grey hair and our qualifications and our scars in the business. But we're both semi-retired. We're in a very lucky position that we've had a long time within travel, but we're broadly, even before this event, sitting at home, looking from the outside, advising, being non-execs, being on boards, and helping people structure their business. It was very clear to the three of us, and we're close friends, we talk regularly, that there's never been a bigger crisis that we've ever been involved in, or the sector's been involved in. And it's probably time we get off our arses and helped out as much as we can for those people still deeply rooted in the business and still trying to survive in the business. And that's why we called it Rebound. Survive now, so you can rebound later. And you have to balance both. There's a lot of tough things you've got to do now, otherwise you won't survive. But if you also don't plan for the rebound, there won't be a future. So we're talking to people about all those aspects, trying to advise. It's completely free. We're trying to do blogs. We're trying to get experts. We're trying to connect the right people. So if you need help, this is who you talk to. We can provide basic advice, but quite often you'll need legal or restructuring or financial advice. And then we'll put you in touch with those contacts that we have. There's nothing in it per se for us, apart from a little bit of giving back, and we probably need to give a lot back from the benefits we've had from this industry.
That is amazing. You said that it's
that was far too fast. You've already told me off for talking too fast. I know we have an international audience. I apologise, and I'll slow down.
No, that was perfectly. That was perfectly, and actually, the fact that it's actually free of charge, it's amazing. I think this is wonderful, and I urge as many of you guys to take advantage of this. So, Seamus, anything you wanted to add on this?
Yeah, I think between the three of us, we've worked for some very large companies. Obviously, we worked at Air Tours. Will's worked at TUI. He's worked at Thomas Cook. They've all gone through various restructurings, refinancings. We've all gone through 9/11s, volcano disruption. Obviously, this is on a different scale to all of those. But we've all dealt with various businesses which have in fairness, gone through good times and very, very bad times. We've all had to deal with, or actually all three of us had to deal with kind of refinance businesses in those bad times. We've dealt with different types of financiers. Like I've done 4 private equity transactions. I know how the private equity mindset works. Steve's raised money from angels. Will has dealt with some very large institutional financial players, and we think that the combination of our history helps. And I suppose the other reason why this whole thing appealed to me to get involved in is, look, this is a bad time. But it is also a period of change. The world will be different in a few months' time, over the next few years, and there will be opportunities. There will be new ways of doing things. And I thought, no, this is a good way for us to see those changes, to help those changes come about. As there will be, just after 9/11, there was a new ways of doing things. This will generate new ways of operating for everybody.
That's great, thank you. Can we discuss the thorny topic of refunds versus credit notes? Where do you guys stand? Seamus, do you wanna take this?
Yeah. Well, let's be clear. I wouldn't say that we all have identical views. Like, again, we are 3 people who've all run our own businesses, and we all have our nuanced view. Look, I suppose I start off with the basic principle that if you can't give somebody the service you said you were going to give them, they should have their money back. And whether that's in travel, outside of travel, wherever, I think that customer relationship is key. So I'll be honest, I would echo the likes of David Speakman and Kane Perry of Vivid Travel, who say customers, if they want their money, should have their money. So let me just say, that is my basic principle. I think we should always adhere to that principle. But without a shadow of a doubt, look, this is difficult because who has got the money to give back to the customer is difficult in our industry. Yes, if you've given your money to a travel agent, that travel agent's given that money to a tour operator. That tour operator has given some of that money to an airline or some of that money to a hotel in a prepayment. Well, the idea that the travel agent can within 14 days get the money back from the tour operator, who then can get the money back from the airline, or who can get the money back from the hotel. Yeah, the package travel regulations weren't built for that. They weren't built for everybody doing that all at once. I do think, though, that somehow customers should be able to get their money back if they want it back. I think that principle is a key principle. And I think governments ABTA need to figure out a way to do that. Now, they may not be able to, but I look, if I was a business, if I'm running my business, and for instance, I'm invested in various businesses which do have this problem, and no, they are offering customers vouchers. And I think, look, I think a good idea, look, but there are pros and cons, because fundamentally, if you're offering a customer voucher, you're asking the customer to fund your business, to give you working capital. It might be the only way you have of getting cash at the moment. But
Steve and I have talked about that same subject, because I was going through a similar problem. And you, Steve, talked to me about credit notes and what's the difference and what does that mean? Do you want to expand on what you've been?
Yeah. I'm with Seamus, but I'm not at the same time. So any credit note or any voucher you give is in danger of ruining your relationship with that customer. That's just the bottom line. But if you don't survive today, you won't have that customer in the future anyway. So you've got to look at your own personal circumstances and say, right, how do I survive today? And it probably means you have to be unfair. Do you treat all customers the same? Or do you say, right, okay, who are the tour operators or partners I really need to protect because they're the long-term, big volume deliverers? You might have to have a different deal for them compared with people who've only ever worked with you once and might never come back anyway. It's a very difficult balance, but what you need to do is understand, as Seamus says, this is not free money. This is an interest-free loan that has to be repaid at some point. The benefit of a credit note is it retains, in the UK at least, the financial protection from ATOL. So, for example, if you gave a voucher, it's not 100% clear. If you get the right format and give a credit note, and you then later fail, which some companies will, that customer is still protected under the ATOL scheme. And I think you've got to get the legals right to make sure your customers are protected as much as you can. The other key aspect here is how we're seeing a divergence of the power of the lobbying of the airlines. And the airlines have lobbied very hard at a European level. And a lot of countries are varying their rules for airlines, saying, yes, you can give credit notes. That gives a massive problem for travel agents, because quite often now, under ATOL rules, they are the principal, and more importantly, they're the ones that have collected the money from the customer. So if the customer does say, I've had enough of this, and I'm going to do a credit card refund, it will them and their trust funds will be get hit. So everybody argues, trust funds protect us, trust funds protect the customer. No, they don't. Because say it's £1,000 holiday, and £500 of that was for a flight, that flight has gone out of the trust fund to an airline. If that airline then gives a credit note back, how do you refund £1,000 from the trust fund when you've only got £500 left in it? So it does not protect the customer in these circumstances. So nothing is perfect. It's better protection than nothing, but nothing is perfect. And that's why we do need government rules across the whole chain, because if it's one side and airlines are allowed to do it, when customers think they can do refunds, it will literally take down half the UK travel industry, because it's not the commission you're giving back, it's the entire flight cost you have no longer got. And that's why it's such a big quandary for us.
Yeah, and as Seamus was saying, everyone doing this at the same time is actually a big problem. So thanks for that, guys.
Yeah,
and now I'd like to...
I was saying the government does need to come in and create some clean rule, because when this all ends, let's say when we're outside of our houses again, back to those halcyon days, we can't have that some parts of the distribution have got money, some money is over here, some money over here, and nobody can figure out how do you restart anything. There needs to be a clear position of this is the starting point. And then, sorry, just another thing as well, just for small businesses. Businesses also need to think of how they're going to account for some of these things. So if they do decide to give give credit notes or vouchers, they do need to remember these are still liabilities. So when you use that money to run your business, you still will have that customer next year who's going to come back and say, I now want that product or service. You will have to deliver it. There will be a cost. There will be no more revenue. Your profits for next year could look quite low because you're suddenly having to provide all those products to that customer with no revenue in next year's period because you've taken it in this year.
But
So,
surely there is things that companies can do themselves to actually not face the same situation again in the future. Government, yes, we need the government rules, of course, but surely there is stuff that the travel agent.
Yeah, but if you as a supplier, if you as a supplier decide now I'm not refunding the money to the customer, I'm giving them a voucher, and then over the next 6 months you use that money to keep your business running, sometime that voucher or credit note gets presented. You then have to supply that service or the value of that note. There is that liability. So you just need to bear in mind that actually what you're doing is you're pushing that problem into next year in terms of your profitability as a business.
Okay.
And it's just one of those things to be very careful on the accounting of all this type of stuff.
Yeah, no, very, very.
To come back to your question, what can travel agents or partners do? As we come out of this, I think you've got to look at very carefully how you pay people and how you use protection on those payments. So, for example, some of the large OTAs pay all the airlines with what they call virtual credit cards. And that allows them to do a recharge. So when Thomas Cook went down and Monarch went down, a good example was on the beach, we were able to reclaim all of the money they had paid to that airline from that to that airline's merchant clearer under MasterCard rules. So looking at how you pay people and trying to pay as much as possible using virtual cards or real corporate cards to give you that recharge capability is very important. And also when we're coming out of this, you've got to look at who is a threat to you in the chain. So for example, bed banks, which agents pay on departure, they may say, oh, it's not our problem. The customer's had their holiday. We've paid the money to the bed bank. Everything's great. What happens if that bed bank doesn't pay the hotelier? Because quite often they take 60 days, 90 days credit. And if that bed bank did go bust and the money was owed to the hoteliers, don't expect them to let your customers back in the door without some sort of compensation. It will cause an almighty mess. So therefore, everybody's got to look at harder. Who do they pay money to? What is their financial security? How do they get a reclaim if the worst comes to the worst?
Okay, we've got a lot of questions to go through, guys. So I'm going to try and whiz through, and I want a very concise answer from you because I really think that all of these prepared for you are going to be really interesting for our audience. So the next one is, will the big airlines survive? Seamus.
Yes, well, I think if you talk about the big airlines being kind of, well, IAG, Lufthansa, Ryanair, EasyJet, yeah, I think those will all survive. I think that there might be some question marks over Norwegian, but I think all the main airlines will survive. They will, look, they are large enough. They have big finance departments. They have big treasury departments. They can go and get a corporate bond. They can get the government to give them a corporate, to back a corporate bond. So I think the big airlines will, yes. And in fairness, a lot of them also have assets that they can securitize to get money from. I think they will be smaller, which is going to be the bigger issue. I don't think the world is going to go back. Like, I don't think as soon as we have, I don't know, we're allowed out and we have a vaccine, I don't think the world is going to go back to, yes, we have as many airplanes as we had today flying around. I think that will be the issue. I think it was Lufthansa have already announced that they will be permanently reducing. They will make a permanent cut of 10% to their fleet over the next 2 years, and they've announced the closure of, I don't know which one it was, German Wings or Eurowings, but one of them. So I think that's gonna be the bigger issue. They will survive, the big ones, but they will be smaller because there will be less people going on holidays and there will be less people doing business travel. I think that's probably going to be the main change.
And then, of course, hotels will rely on business traffic will be obviously likely to be hit.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a knock on. Like some regional airports might obviously will have less capacity, but you've already seen that with, like, say, places like Southampton in the UK, which was totally reliant on people like Flybe. But I think the main carriers will be fine.
Can I jump in and make one point?
Yeah, sure. Quickly.
When things happen, right? Okay, so EasyJet, Ryanair, most profitable airlines in Europe. EasyJet, average revenue £157, average cost £152, £5 profit per seat, times a lot of passengers, hugely profitable until coronavirus hit. Because the bigger you are, the harder you fall when everything stops suddenly. Because you go from having that revenue to having £152 cost per seat not flown. So that's why the big airlines are raising money as fast as they can, but they won't be the same businesses when they came out. EasyJet were the lowest cost airline. Now they've got 1.1 billion of debt raised in the last few days around their necks. They are vulnerable to a new EasyJet doing an EasyJet to them as they did it to British Airways. So the whole landscape could easily change in the next 2 years.
So when do you think flights and holidays may go back on sale, Steve?
When I get a crystal ball and I can make it up the same as everybody else. I don't know, but I'm quite scared that we're going to lose this summer. So my logic is very simple, very brutal. We're just coming through the first 3 weeks of our lockdown in the UK. Most other countries locked down for a further 3 weeks at minimum. So before we come out of lockdown, we're probably going to get to mid-June. The problem is that leaves you a very short window to operate summer-only destinations, number one. I won't get technical about talking about empty legs, but you fly out empty, you normally spread that cost over 26 weeks of running a season to Mallorca, for example. If you're only operating from September to October, you don't operate that flight because the cost of empty legs out and empty legs back mean it doesn't work. Secondly, why will borders open again? So there's no logic for borders to be shut once the outbreak has reached into pandemic level in a country and you've got to the peak. But it's a difficult one for politicians because if you open that border and somebody comes through with the disease and infects somebody in your country and they die, you are going to get a massive backlash. So the inertia of not opening borders, it's an easier thing for politicians to do than the brave thing of opening borders. And both of those things scare me. I will come back later. I think we need a corona-free certificate, and that will take time to get in place before people are allowed to travel. So all in all, I'm a bit of a pessimist. I think the market and people will be come out of lockdown long before they're allowed to go on leisure holidays. And I think people need to plan for the worst case and hope for the best case.
This is one for...
Sorry, just on that point, I think people need to focus on domestic tourism. Domestic tourism is where it's going to be for the rest of this summer, assuming we're allowed out of lockdown. Look, I live in Ireland. I don't think anybody in Ireland is really thinking that they're going to be traveling around Europe for the rest of this summer.
Will specialist tour operators in the UK survive, Seamus?
To some degree, look, it's purely going to depend on their financial strength as to date. Look, I suppose, look, you need to look at things. There's two things which companies need to survive. Very large companies, if they have access to cash, will survive. Smaller companies, okay, might not have as much cash, but generally smaller companies are more adaptable. They can cope. Big companies, generally not adaptable, but if they have enough cash, they can just plow their way through and kind of have issues push their issues into the future. Small companies, if they're adaptable, they have loyal customers, they can reduce their costs enough, or they can hibernate. If they can put themselves into a state of hibernation at the moment, which in fairness is what countries are. Like a lot of the activities that the UK government, the Dutch government, the Irish government their notion of kind of giving people, well, effectively paying people to stay at home or taking over companies' salaries, is literally just to make people feel calm enough to just go home and not worry and hibernate throughout this whole thing and then come out the other side. I think coming out the other side is going to be an issue. Like, have companies got enough working capital to start up again? And I think that's what companies need to figure out. Yes, how do I close down the company today, but how do I make sure that I've got enough money to set it up? But even when you close down that company, how do you still kind of do some brand activity, some communication with your customers? Yes, they're not going to buy holidays and stuff like that, but you need to keep those relationships that keep building that brand. I think for those companies whose marketing has been very, very transactional, and it's always transactional. So basically, like, I don't know, complete and utter Google junkies who just buy just to get people in to buy stuff. You think, okay, well, you now need to transition, because you're not going to be selling anything for a while, but you still need to keep your brands going. You still need to have some form of communication. I think that would be a struggle for some companies. Other companies, I think, will be amazing at it. I think the smaller family-owned companies, the companies with real personalities, the personal touch. I've seen some amazing examples in the UK of late. I think those businesses, yeah, will probably still do well. They'll keep their customers. They just need to reduce their costs now, but somehow keep a good brand message going to their customer base.
Okay, can I jump in there quickly on a couple of probably accounting financial issues? Assuming this summer's not going to be great or written off, the next big booking period is summer 21. The problem people will have when they're launching is, if you're selling summer 21 in September and October, which is probably likely, you're incurring your operating costs of running the business, you're incurring your advertising costs, but you won't get the commission until 6 months later. That's a big issue, because normally you've got funds and working capital from previous bookings on the summer. So you've probably got to look at saying, how do I get cheap advertising? So ironically, the best people to advertise to are your previous bookers, but not ones you owe money to. So please split those out into a separate pot and do not talk to them in terms of rebooking holidays. I mean, sorry, it sounds obvious, but people will make mistakes like that. They will poke what I call the nest for people who've got credit notes saying, book something else. No, please don't do that. But there's lots of other customers that you will have for the last couple of years that you've got to re-engage, and you've got to look at re-engagement strategies. Like, you may talk to them about, okay, help us find you the next holiday by telling us what you've done over the last 5 years. Yeah, so think positively about your holiday experiences. Report back to us. Tell us what you really like. So there's loads of ways of talking to your existing customer base, engaging with them while they're shut down, trying to reenact them, because they are the cheapest people you'll ever have to remarket to when you're trying to rebound. And you've got to look at how you rebound.
We've got a lot of international agents and operators in the Connections community, and also now attending this webinar. Would your advice be for them the same?
Absolutely. Basically, you've got key partners. We already talked about how you may have to have a different policy of refunds to key partners. But what's your contact strategy with them? How do you remind them you're still there? One of the key things is we're going to lose a lot of the normal contracting periods. So how do you make sure that you have got the deals in place, you have got the rates out there, and you are ready to be featured in their brochures, their online sites, whatever it takes for when we do rebound. So use this quiet time now to do the things you'd normally do. Focus on summer 21 and the winter, but even look at offers for September, October, because we don't know. Hopefully we might come out earlier.
Okay, well,
yeah,
I'm gonna open it to everyone. So I'm gonna urge everyone to just put questions in on either the Q&A or the chat. So don't be shy, feel free, this is your chance. Mandip C is already asked a question, and I'm going to read it out to you guys. Will the regular mass tourism players continue with hundreds of group departures without too much thought for the carbon footprint? Or can this be the game changer to go with a lighter footprint on the planet? Or is this just a dream? And he continues saying, also, will this spur the rise of small groups, experiential and longer duration tours than shorter and weekend type of flying around?
Shall I go first on that one, Seamus?
Yes, I know what you'll say. Go for it.
I think you've got to look at the trends that have been happening before. So there's been a massive growth in experiential travel. People are bored with 1 week, 2 week beach holidays doing nothing else. We know that. Ongoing trend. There's also been a little bit of a backlash against the carbon footprint and flying. And I'm worried that some research will come out of the period where we've had no flying for 3 or 4 months that says, actually, this is massively beneficial for the environment. It does worry me, because that will give a further backlash against travelling. If you look at travel and leisure holidays, I see no reason people's inclination to go to other parts of the world, meet different cultures, engage with those cultures will stop. I see that as a massive benefit we bring to the world. The more people understand each other and their culture, the less they go to war. We haven't had wars for a long time, yeah, but it's a good thing in my book. Business travel will be scarred by this change because all of a sudden people realise that Zoom meetings do work. Home working does work. Instead of flying to America, I can have a Zoom meeting with 4 or 5 people and still get the job done. So I can't see business travel rebounding the same size. I can see leisure travel coming back to the same size, but only when the airlines grow back to their normal capacities or whatever you think is normal. Because I'm with Seamus, they will be much smaller coming out of this for the initial 6 months at least. Seamus.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, I think, yeah, look, I think total carbon footprint will go down, partly because I think the airlines will shrink. I agree with Steve. I think leisure will rebound quickly. Yeah, look, there's that many people spending 2 months in a house with their own family. They will all want to go away somewhere soon. But I think it'll be business travel. I think business travel will rightly shrink, and I think that then will spur changes and more conversations about carbon footprint and things like that, without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay. Reem is actually asking a question. Do you think that there will be a rise in demand for holidays to private islands such as Maldives, Seychelles, Fiji, Bora Bora, etc.? My prediction for the Middle Eastern market is that this will be where they will want to go. Any thoughts?
I don't know if they will especially stand out. I think that trend existed before anyway. So I don't think the leisure trends are all going to change. Like Steve said, look, people for many years now have wanted to go to more and more special places, more and more secluded places, more experiential travel. Like, this is an interruption, and people should see this as an interruption. Those trends will continue. So no, I'd say all those types of special, different, experiential travel as well will all continue. Like, this will be a blip.
The only thing I'd say is people won't travel to coronavirus hotspots.
No, of course.
So we can't assume that coronavirus expands, equally across each country. It takes each country the same time to get rid of it. Ironically, for tourism, Italy may be the best place because they've had it, they're coming out of it, and people believe that. Whereas Spain and other places is still ongoing. So it sounds ironic, but people's view formed by the media about where is safe to go, combined whether they've had the virus or not, will dictate travel. So, for example, I can't see a lot of families going on a holiday until they've had the virus. Because if you're still worried about catching it, The reasons you haven't travelled now are still valid. So ironically, the people the best to market to are the people who've had the virus, feel they have partial, if not full immunity, we don't know, and are willing to travel.
I would just to add into this point, I think, I don't know about the kind of how the coronavirus will kind of different individuals, but what I'm pretty sure of is in the future, people will take a lot more notice of government advice in the UK, FCO advice on where you shouldn't go and should go. I think that will play hugely into insurance policies in the future. I think even from a travel agency point of view, if travel agents are, or like the likes of TUI and stuff, if they're, or even TUI as a tour operator, if they're taking people to destinations where coronavirus is still, I don't know, endemic, I think that will be an issue. So I think all of those types of things are going to become a concern for me. So to some degree, I don't even know if it's just be individuals. I think there will be corporate responsibility on lots of tour operators not to take people to places where they could get infected.
So it's quite complicated. Sorry,
Carla Andrezzo is saying, will last minute bookings be a trend again?
I'll take this one. I think that we're going to see two markets. Ultra late. So if the borders do open, as people hope, in August/September, you will have a very strong last minute rush to booking. And here's quite an interesting one. That goes completely against the low cost carriers yield model. Because their whole yield model they built up over the years, go to so early, move the price up every 4 seats, and charge a higher price later to departure. They may have to adopt the old-fashioned tour operator model of chuck it on, get as much volume as you can, and sell it as cheap as you can, close to departure to fill the plane. So it's going to be a real interesting ultra-late market where people are just going to be going, right, okay, I want to get away, where can I go, where's cheap, where's the less coronavirus? It's a really interesting market. And then there'll be an ultra-early market for summer 21 because, as Seamus says, people have been locked away for 2 to 3 months and they want to dream. They want to book their holidays. They want to have things to look forward to. And a lot of them may still have credit notes. So, for example, when we close down, normally the UK industry will be about 40% loaded in terms of the holidays sold. So if all 40% have credit notes and move to next summer, that's a very large load factor to start with, and then prices might be quite high. So you might have a strong early demand, but quite high prices for next summer. So again, it's interesting to see how this shapes up. Ultra late, ultra early, both definitely going to happen. What happens to the middle ground, not sure.
I think on that point, I think there'll definitely be an ultra late whenever this does end, because there'll be a bit of a spike depending on where you can go. I think the other part of this equation which will kick in will be how the terms and conditions of holidays have to change, because nobody's going to book months, and next time round, nobody's going to book 6 months, 12 months in advance and then suddenly find out that something's happened, that there's been coronavirus has come back into this place and I've got another credit note to add to my existing credit note. So I think people will want to know, what is the flexibility on terms and conditions? How do I get my deposit back? Or when do I have to pay my balance? Like a lot of companies in the UK demand balance payment of holidays 2 months. Well, the cruise lines used to be 3 months. A lot of companies were 2 months. That might go to 14 days. Like that will come into the nature of what the product actually is moving forward.
Okay, you're on mute.
You've muted yourself.
Apologies about that.
She's back.
Let's carry on. What are your top tips for cutting costs, Steve?
Depends where you are. Each country's got different rules. In the UK, the government acted very quickly to get people at home, and they introduced a furlough scheme where you can get 80% of your salary up to 2,500. So for most people with average salaries of about 36,000 or below, you get 80% of your salary to go home immediately and sit at home. Higher income people obviously don't get as much. So Anybody who hasn't furloughed their staff by now is mad. So yes, you need to keep some around to deal with customers who want to rebook and the rolling rebooking process, but you need to maximise as many people as you can to furlough, because in essence the government will pay your hibernation costs for you. It won't go on forever. We know it goes on to June. I don't expect it to go on much further than that, at 80%, because at the moment most businesses don't contribute. I think the government will reduce it down to say 50% and expect businesses to contribute. And I think at that point, businesses say, right, okay, how many of these staff do we truly need? Unfortunately, I've got an analogy. It's called the tide goes out. When the tide goes out, all the rotting wood and dead wood is left exposed. That's not a nice way about talking about people, but it is an analogy. It says the tide's gone out. You have to choose your best people. You have to regroup around those best people, and you may have to let lots of others go, and you may have to find new best people to add to your team, because you have to be leaner, meaner, and smarter as we come out and rebound into this marketplace. So cut every cost you can in terms of staff costs. It's hard, it's mean, it's nasty. None of us have ever liked doing it, and nobody will ever enjoy having to do that conversation. The next one is a bit easier. Stop paying VAT, stop paying rates, stop paying anything government related, and ask for a holiday. The government said yes to most of those. Go back to your landlords or any large contracts and ask for a holiday or a reduction in your costs, because you need to survive today. Cash, cash, cash. Look at any reasons cash is going out of your business and try to stop it. Basically, if you have nil revenue coming in, you have to have close to nil overheads as you can possibly incur. Survive today, hibernate, and use that time to replan exactly how you're going to rebound in the future.
Yeah, it's tough times, eh, guys? What about home life?
One of the conversations I've had is lots of business, because we've already had lots of inquiries into Rebound. And it's interesting that everybody naturally focuses on all the business decisions and doesn't look at any of their home decisions. So the amount of senior management I've talked to has said, right, we've taken 50% pay cut. We've absolutely nailed it as low as we can. And I say to them, guys, you do realise you're never going to go through a worse 9 months in your career, in your life, in all likelihood. This is the toughest period of your career, your business life you're ever going to have. So why don't you make it easier by deferring your home mortgage? And they all go, oh, no, I don't want to defer my mortgage, I want to pay it off. Well, pay it off those 9 months when you're earning good money, not when you're on your knees as a business. Yeah, can you get a holiday period on your car lease? Can you get a holiday period on any large loans you've got? Basically, move your spent expenditure and your fixed expenditure back to when you're likely to have decent income. If you're doing it in your business, why aren't you doing that in your home life? Because the less pressure you have from home, the more balanced and ability you will have to manage your business life. The two go in hand in hand. It's not quite yin and yang, but they're really closely related, and people don't think about themselves enough in these times.
It's a very good point, actually. Subash is asking a question: how much of the current situation will potentially create an impact on people's lifestyle? How do you think the hoteliers would adjust to this situation?
It's a tough one. Every month we're in lockdown, the stats say that you lose 2% of your GDPR, your gross domestic product. If you have a negative GDPR, you're in recession. So every European country is going to exit this in recession. And it's going to be a worse recession than 2008's financial crash, because it's a completely global recession. So, sorry guys, it's going to be tough, not just for this period, but when you come out. So as a hotelier, you've got to get friendly banks. You've got to try to push back some of your overheads and your costs of repaying loans over a longer period. You've got to look at your staff costs, and it's going to be really tough, because there will be less holiday makers in the short term, guaranteed.
Can I just add a couple of pieces in there to what Steve was just saying? I think the other thing as well, a couple of pieces. One, you need to help your staff reduce their costs as well. To reduce like everything, like the schemes in the UK where the government will pay for your staff's broadband. They'll no longer count. They'll give you allowances for phones, for laptops, etc. You just need to see what you can do to reduce your staff's their own personal costs, as well as just your personal costs in your mortgage, etc. That is key. Help them to cope with all of this. Steve's mentioned a number of things there in terms of cutting costs. One of the things I would definitely say in terms of businesses, make sure you have got your overdraft. Make sure you have maxed your overdraft is at the highest level. Overdrafts aren't like credit cards where the credit card company just goes off and sends you a letter saying, oh, you got that letter saying, Capital One, I've increased your credit card limit to 50,000 today. Ring your bank, make sure you know what your overdraft is. Make sure that it is high, because you do not want to be negotiating an overdraft in 2 months or 3 months. All of the really big businesses have gone out there, and the first thing they did, they got their overdrafts. Now, they call it a revolving credit facility, because that's what big companies like to call their overdrafts. But you need to make sure you've got your overdraft ready. Because banks, look, at the moment, everybody is in this together, but banks can be a bit strange. Today, they're all in it together with everybody. In another 2 months or 3 months, those relationships with banks fray. I remember back in the financial crisis, the last one, I had my relationship bank manager from Barclays came to see me about a £3 million loan we had, and they're saying they wanted the money back. And I was obviously saying, well, what about our relationship? And his quote to me was, if you want a relationship, get a puppy. We're a bank. So you need to sort out things like your overdraft and getting loans, like getting a proper loan, getting a loan rather than relying on customers' money. Because if you get a loan, it's a fixed agreement. You're borrowing this much money and you're paying it back, so much here, so much then, so much then. It gives you structure. You can plan. Relying on customers' money and things like that, you don't know when you're going to have to give that money back. So as well as cutting costs, open up other avenues of cash, even if it's just emergency cash, that you know that if things go really bad, that cash or that facility is there.
So to jump in on that, Seamus, one of the things we talk to a lot of people about is take the government loan. Even if you don't need it, please take it. Please don't spend it. Put it there for a rainy day. It's interest-free for the first year, so why wouldn't you? But don't spend it. It's not free money, but it is massively vital liquidity that you may need for your startup period. You may need it for that period where you've got advertising costs, but no commissions coming through. That's the sort of thing you should use it for, i.e. growing your business, not paying historic overhead you can't afford.
While people still have money, you should try, while you still have cash and you're still a good business and you've got your last year's accounts, now is the time to try and actually see, can I get money from the government? Can I get money from my bank? Again, like Steve says, not to use unless you really have to, but just so that you can feel safe knowing you've got that cash. So fill in every government form, apply for everything that exists.
Okay, Michaela?
So do you think that let's carry on with the questions, because again, I've got so many. Do you think that there will be a pent-up demand and a big rush to book, Steve?
Yes, because any lockdown causes demand. Ultra late market, as we said before, and also a big rush to book next summer. But you've got, as Seamus says, customers are not just going to set the same payment terms. So if you want those customers, you probably need to look at how you make holidays more flexible. I think they give you the deposit, but they need flexibility and guarantee of free movement if anything happens due to Corona. The more you reassure customers, the more they book. The demand will be there. You've got to make sure you've got enough aircraft to put it on, but I think those aircraft will come back quite quickly, and you need to make the most of any rebound you can get your hands on.
What should companies be doing to plan for the rebound, Seamus?
I think you need to look at,
but before you answer, bearing in mind that we've got a lot of luxury attendees on this webinar, so if you can try and go towards that sector, that would be amazing.
No, great. I think people need to be conscious of how the world is changing, and figure out, because like we're not going to go back to where we were. Like, so a couple of minutes to start with. The world is not going to suddenly become open again. So the world closed over 2 or 3 weeks, but the world might not open. Well, it might take 6 months easily for the world to open. Different sectors will open before different countries will open. Different sectors of industry will open up first. Different countries will open up. But there's a couple of really big trends which you see today. Social media consumption is going through the roof. Like, I know some of you people this might be your 5th webinar today, but Instagram, YouTube, all of these things are huge. The nature of how you develop brands, the nature of how you communicate with customers, has probably taken a generational shift in terms of how we are, the devices, how we consume things. And actually, in fact, I think luxury experiential travel, that all plays to that. So I'll be honest, today, if you're in a luxury business or luxury hotel or experiential, literally, you need to be, watching more seminars like this, but very much watching as many seminars as possible about how does YouTube work, how does Instagram work, how does Facebook work. You need to be sitting down with your kids and asking them exactly how does Pinterest work, how does TikTok work. But you need to understand.
That's a good one, actually. My children are a lot on TikTok.
No,
yeah,
you need to understand how these things are working. They are the new world. Look, nobody has probably gone out and bought a newspaper now for a month. They probably aren't going to buy newspapers again for another 2 months. Like, yes, TV is being watched more, but the way we can, like, the consumption of digital and even just old-fashioned TV has suddenly jumped up. It's going to stay up. Like the amount, like on luxury, especially, like, I know, like the direct messaging on Instagram and Facebook will be huge. So now is the opportunity for you to start building those little communities.
Shall I jump in with a couple of examples?
Sorry?
I'll jump in with a couple of examples. I personally used to use Facebook a lot. I've stopped because Facebook was about my friends telling me what they were doing. They're not doing anything, they're in lockdown. I suddenly moved to house party, and I'm having video conferences and video chats with lots of people in the evening with different groups, because phone is not enough anymore. In the past, you'd have a phone call, voice to voice, that's perfectly okay. Now you're going, no, I want to see you. Yeah, so those channels, as Seamus said, is a revolution, a shift so fast that we've never seen that shift before. So at the moment, nobody's advertising on house party. Top and tail, those Zoom conferences, top and tail, those Google Hangouts. Look at your video, look at your messaging. How do you get your hotel, your luxury product, your experience in front of a new audience at a low cost because it's brand new? So as Seamus says, work it out and then get commercial. What's in it for me? How do I communicate? Second thing, chat, online chat. We used to have online chat between customer and then supplier. That's going to go to Zoom and to face-to-face. Customers will say, right, I've got some questions about this property. Where do I press a button to talk to the manager? That may sound too radical, but within the next 5 years, that is going to happen, guys. Yeah, so you need to look at all your communication policies with customers and look at how you visualize them, how you make yourself available, and how you have from result to home experiences before the customer goes, So they're really excited and really looking forward to going on your luxury holiday. Luxury is not just about what you deliver in result. Luxury is about the entire booking journey and how you shape that and how you change that. So there's lots to be done.
People are going to want to see you. When you speak, people are going to want to speak when people speak to you in the future, when they're ringing your reservations person, when they're ringing reception, they will want to see the face of that person. It is becoming the norm. This video phone calls has just become mainstream in the space of a month. If this continues for another 2 months, you need to understand that is normal. Like the idea of big faceless empty call centers, or I'll pass you to the reservation department. No, they will want to know an individual. So dealing with businesses will become more individual. I want to know who the person is I'm talking to. I want to see their facial expressions. I think that will become a key feature of businesses. Individual travel agents or home workers who start conducting most of their conversations with their customers on video, I think will become the norm. And we call it video, like the word video. It's like us calling a phone when it's a massive computer. But the word video will probably seem quite an archaic concept. But it will. People will want to see those facial expressions. That will be the norm for travel agents, for people in resort answering questions, for hoteliers, for your reservations department. Backgrounds will become important.
So to sum that up, think less about pictures, less about glamorous video shoots, and more about real life, real conversations, real people, and connecting from your homes, in your hotel, etc., into people's homes. That's the new form of luxury. That's I want to understand what I'm going to get before I get there. And when I turn up, I want to feel like I'm familiar because I've already seen the receptionist. I've already chatted to the receptionist. I feel comfortable. They absolutely know what I want for my holiday. That's luxury.
Being personal in the future won't just mean that, oh God, I've just had an email from the hotel and they've got my name on it. That's not going to. People will want to see each other. They will want pictures of people. They will want to interact with people. That is going to be a key change. So weirdly, even though we are all completely social distancing and isolating, we are probably I can definitely say I've probably seen more of Steve Endacott's face in the last 3 weeks than I probably had in the previous 6 months.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
But that is one of the kind of the strange things that is happening now.
It is ironic, as you said, Seamus. We are so isolated, yet we are craving personalization, and it'll be there to stay. So a great thought. I'd like to move on to talking about tourist board and the role that tourist board will need to play moving forward. And as you know, we work with a lot of tourist boards, so I'm really curious to hear your view. Steve, do you want to take this one?
I think it's vital. 9% of the global GDPR is tourism. 9%. None of the world can survive that disappearing, and we need to get it back as soon as possible. So each country, quite frankly, needs to invest in getting customers back. Each country needs to fight for each share. And in the past, tourist boards, I'll be blunt, like Spain, have been lazy. Just assume that people will come to Spain because it's in demand. Those days are gone. So they've got to look at how they spend their money and how they spend it wisely. The days of 50-50 press advertising are gone. It's now how do they create the right materials, the right videos, the right forums for their customers to meet their suppliers. And also we've got to condense contracting into a very short period of time. So things like connections are vital. It might have to be a virtual connections to start with, but we can't just sit back and wait for the end of the lockdown before we plan for the rebound. We need to plan for the rebound now. That needs to be done virtually in the short term. Tourist boards need to do agreements now with OTAs and airlines and everybody else about, okay, how many flights you bringing back in? What support do you need to bring those flights back in? Right, what TV advertising we're doing, what video advertising we're doing. Because if you don't invest on the rebound, you are going to miss out on those customers.
It is very enlightening that you say all of this, because I've had a lot of conversations with tourist board, and a some of them have actually been very proactive in asking, you know, what next, what are we going to do, and seeking our view in helping them to recover. And I just feel that there is more that can be done, but people are still paralyzed by whatever it's happening around. But the most proactive one, you can tell, are already planning for the future. And yes, the tourist board. Sorry, Seamus, you were talking.
Saying, look, again, this will pass. Like, the world is not going to end. Like, okay, we don't know if the world's unlikely to go back to normal next week or next month, but I think we all know that in 18 months it'll be back to normal. So somewhere in that period ago, but you have to build your brand. Tourist boards still have to entice people to go to those areas. Like, all that's happening now is, look, everything stopped, so everybody is starting the race at the same time. And you need to be in that race. This is like a massive big reset button that's happened, and everybody's going to want all those early travelers to go to their places. So look, it is brand, it is communication. You want people to want to go there when they are allowed to travel.
Gemma was asking earlier, what about international event and meetings? What are your thoughts? And we're one of them, and we are already, we have already reinvented ourselves. We have an online community which we launched in the space of 2 weeks, where we got already nearly 500 people on. We're planning virtual events, but what do you think about the international events and meeting space? What are your thoughts on that?
I think you need to reshape everything you're doing in the short term, because they won't occur. There will not be a WTM probably in November. That's very sad. But giving everybody the time now to plan for that and get all their kit and all their people and all certificated that they haven't got the disease, it's like not going to happen. So therefore, we need to work out, okay, so what do we replace that with? And it has to be virtual. It has to be Zoom type approaches. It has to be smaller groups. And you've probably got to do a lot more pre-meeting and pre-appointments to make sure you've got the right people connecting at the right time. In the longer term, you can never beat face-to-face. We're not talking about replacing face-to-face, but we have to supplement it. And you need to meet people once and then probably have virtual meetings with them 3 or 4 times to continue the conversation. That's probably the change.
Yeah, I think events, what you class as events, be it the powwows, the World Travel Markets, I think those will get scaled back. I think meetings will get scaled back. I think if they are events like you have the connections, like the connection things, where like they are events and they are very experiential of a particular product and things like that, I think those things will continue. But I think just the general meetings, I think those will reduce substantially.
Agreed.
I'm going to ask everyone to just put their questions on the chat. I've got already one from Haja. If we predict a rush of last-minute booking once travelers have better visibility, your thoughts about encouraging booking for much later period from now? Currently, are travelers from the US and Europe comfortable to envisage future holidays?
I think they are, absolutely. Not everybody will be able to go away in September, October. So, for example, one of the things that is a big fear is children are what they call super spreaders. So if you talk to people in education, they're hoping 25% to get kids back to school in September. They're planning 75% to get them back in November. Because unfortunately, they don't show the symptoms. They go home to their individual families and they start spreading the disease again. So having children off school to take on holiday might even be not possible this summer. So therefore, families will definitely want to book holidays. And if they can't book this summer, they will go out to next Easter, they will go out to next half term, they will go out to next summer holidays. As we're debating long and hard, they will want some flexibility and some reassurance that they'll be able to move if anything happens, or they get the money back without anything happens. You can't sting people twice. And although I'm in favour of credit notes and vouchers because we have to survive, we have to realise the damage they're doing to our existing customers and to the trust of our customers moving forward, and we have to react to that. So in summary, yes, there will be demand, but we have to act differently to harvest that demand.
I just want to quickly point it. I think people need to be careful not to clutch on to a notion of like there's going to be lots of late demand. Again, look, I'm in Ireland. We're not even sure when or if there will be school holidays, because the schools have been closed now. The state exams have all been moved back. There is talk actually of opening up the schools in July or August, purely because to bring them back to do their state exams. So there is huge uncertainty. So it is going to come down to how flexible people's terms are. Obviously, I'm actually not in favor of credit notes, but I still think it is about giving flexibility. You have to give people the flexibility now.
So Seamus, who will the winners be and who will the losers be?
I think the main winners are going to be people who have loads of cash, businesses which have loads of cash. Without a shadow of a doubt, they will do well. And then it's those businesses who can adapt, who can change their business models, who can become more flexible, who can reduce their fixed costs, have a far more of a marginal cost structure. People who can adapt to new marketing technologies. People who look after their customers now and don't build and maintain their reputation. Like, look, it can take a good business, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years to establish a great reputation. You could lose it in the next 2 months by annoying your customers, your most loyal customers. So what I would say is, yes, you have to survive, but don't throw the reputation for looking after your customers that you've built in your business over a very long period. Don't treat that casually.
Okay.
Reputation is all, especially in a social media world.
So Steve, will all the venture capitalists back their travel investments further, do you think?
Who knows, but I'm going to finish off the previous question first.
Okay.
Because I've also got views that I think I'm in agreement with Seamus on this one.
I thought you were. That's why I moved on to the next question.
Winners,
So we only got 5 minutes, guys.
Home working networks are the winners. They have no shops, they have no fixed overheads, they have very variable cost and service staff labour. They're absolutely the winners. And as we come out of this, loads of shop networks will be bust, loads of shops will be empty, and their staff will move to be home workers. Absolutely guaranteed. OTAs will be winners if they've got an asset-light model on the beach. They're not going anywhere. They've got an asset-light model. They can put themselves in hibernation at quite low cost. They can bounce back quite quickly because they've got cash. If you're an airline, you're damaged. If you're a hotelier, you're damaged. And you've got a lot of recovery time because you've got a high fixed asset, high fixed cost, that when things stop suddenly, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. So therefore, the lighter you are coming out of it, the quicker you move. So there will be consolidation coming out of this. There will be people starting businesses out of this. There will be complete new startups coming out of this. Because as you come into the rebound, if you've got none of the legacy problems, you're actually in a good position. You may have come out of a business that's got rid of you. What are you going to do? Get a job? Not easy. So therefore, you might be going into doing your own business for the first time because you need that shock to become an entrepreneur. Most entrepreneurs don't volunteer for it. They get sacked. Yeah, and they think, oh, what do I do next? And what am I going to do in the future? And then they do entrepreneurship. So those are the winners and losers. VCs, really interesting bunch. So most VCs invest and have a 3-year cycle when they want to get the money out again. That's just been chucked out the window. So virtually every business has been reset to zero and it needs at least another 3 to 4 years to get the profits back up before it can be sold. That is not a natural VC marketplace. So therefore, I can see the VCs trying to exit, but who's going to buy? I can see some VCs being really brutal, saying, right, okay, I've got 20 investments. I'm investing in these top 10. The other 10, I'm letting go. Banks, you can have them back because you've got the main debt. I'm putting no more money in. So,
just for the benefit of everyone, VC, venture capitalists, yeah?
Yeah. Venture capitalists are the nicest, loveliest people until you can't pay them back. And then they become quite ugly and nasty people who do whatever it takes to protect their shareholders' money and their backers' money. So there's a lot of people in for a rude awakening who are VC owned. If I had a choice going into this crisis, I wouldn't be VC owned.
Okay.
Because then you can raise further capital from bond issues, etc. That's probably the best place to be. So big winner for me on the beach, big winner for me, travel counsellors. Outside of that, don't want to name the losers because I don't want to be seen to pushing people under. But people will be going under in the next few months, and a large number of them.
Okay, I've got another couple of questions, and I'm going to ask you to be really brief because I'd like to close this in about 5 minutes. There are lots of questions coming through, but what the good news is that you guys are going to be available even after the webinar to get people to contact you, and we'll do that through our community as well. So I'll let you know that in a minute. This question, and I know you guys both have different opinions on this one. Will the European Union survive?
I'll go first. I was a Remainer. I think as Britain, we should still be in the European Union. The more countries collaborate, the more financial security they have in the longer term normally. When something like Corona happens, you put your arms around your family, you protect your family first, then you protect the country, and you become very selfish. So yes, there are occasions where one country's lent resources or medical care to the other country. Not many. Has the European Union really acted to look after all members in these circumstances? I don't think they have. More relevantly, when we come out of this, the biggest issue is everybody's in recession. If you have your own currency and your own financial controls, as Britain will do, we can pump money into the economy, fiscal stimulus, try to keep us out of recession or minimise recession. When you're part of Europe and you have a common currency and a central bank and a central set of rules and interest rates, it's a lot harder. And bluntly, countries like Greece, Spain, and Italy, who are on the weaker boundaries of the EU, will need support from the stronger countries, the Germanys, the Frances, and I'm not sure they're going to get it. And I think in those circumstances, I can see at least one more country leaving, if not 2 to 3. So I don't think the European Union as a whole will break up, but I can see individual countries leaving to take control of their own economy. And Seamus disagrees because he's Irish and I'm British.
Okay.
And obviously I think that's just complete and utter rubbish. That was pretty much like the Daily Telegraph. Here I am. Look, I think Europe will get stronger at the end of this. I think the European Commission Council was slow to start off with this. It took people by surprise. I think Europe is looking far more together than I would say the United States of America is on this topic as a whole. I think to Steve's point about different currencies, interest rates, all the rest of it. Look, interest rates have been nearly at 0 or 1% for years now. I don't think interest rates and that kind of monetary policy makes a difference. I do think that the European Union, when it sorts out deciding to have Corona bonds or Euro bonds or at least mutualized debt, I think that will be in a much better position than anywhere else in the world. And I do think there is cooperation throughout Europe. Look, you've got coronavirus patients from France and from Italy being treated in Germany. You've got people moving medical supplies. Granted, it was slow in the beginning, moving medical supplies across Europe. I know in Ireland, where I am, we're sending all of our corona tests to Germany to be done because they can process them much faster. And rather than trying to build our own little processing thing, we've said, no, do it in Germany because they're already doing 500,000 a week. They can add a few more to theirs. I'm actually optimistic that out of this, there will be a stronger, more cohesive Europe. Look, that's not to say there aren't going to be rows, that things are going to take longer to do. Yeah, they will. But no.
And I hope he's right.
I don't see anybody else following the UK.
I hope you're right, and I wish we hadn't left. But such is life, we have. So you get on with it, we don't care anymore. See you later.
So if the EU breaks up, what will the implications for travel be?
I better take this because Seamus says it won't, so there'll be no implications. Basically, depends on how it breaks up. If Spain and Greece did leave, they'd launch their own currency. That would probably make them cheaper compared with some of the other destinations, because we've seen already that, for example, Turkey's benefited from being outside of the euro over the last few years, because it's all about relative exchange rates to the UK, so that could have an impact. Fifth freedom flying rights, we'd have to get all that sorted out. We've got to get all that sorted out for the whole of Europe, but probably easier dealing with one person. It might get harder. For those individual countries, I don't know, it could be a benefit, it could be a downside. So, messy, in summary, messy.
Well, I'm going to ask the last question to Seamus. What is the biggest tip for Rebound? What is your biggest tip for Rebound?
My biggest tip is learn everything you can about social media today. The world is changing. Social media consumption has gone up by 50%. And that's going to be for all age groups. Like, every grandmother now knows how to FaceTime. Every grandmother now knows how to Zoom. My children at the moment are all using Google Class to go through school. Everything is becoming more digital. You need to make sure that you don't have to know which buttons to press and what these little 3 dots here does and that, but you need to understand the general implications of how to convey your message, your brand, your product on social media. And I'm using social media in a very wide context of that, not just Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much.
Couldn't agree more.
That's all we've got for today. Thank you very much for extending the offer of getting people in touch with you. We will create a group on our Connections newly created online community where the chat can continue. I personally found this very, very insightful. So thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure many people have. We have a lot of questions unanswered, which I will pass on to you guys, and maybe you can answer that privately yourselves. Our next Connect Talk webinar sessions will be on Tuesday, the 14th of April at 3 p.m. British time with Jeff Chatterton on crisis communication, second part, and on the 21st of April, Tuesday at 2 p.m. still British time, on incentives with Scotty Johnson. So it has to be said that now more than ever, our industry must stay connected. So we've launched this brand new digital product for members of our community last week. There is huge amounts of engagement on it. I would like to create a group on this specific webinar where you guys are on it or will be on it and can moderate, can chip in and chat with everyone. Everyone will be invited to this chat in our community so that they can learn a bit more. So for those of you who are in the Connections community, you will all receive a personal link on this. And that's left, all that's left is just to let us know if we can be of any help, if we can lend a hand, big or small. If you're in need of a comforting conversation, we are here for you. Wishing you all a happy and healthy Easter and a little bank holiday weekend. It's up to you to choose whether you have holiday in your living room or in your bedroom. That I'll leave the choice to you. But for now, thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Seamus. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you.